Welcome back to another edition of Slingin Dirt, presented by Lost Dog Design. LostDogDesign.com. Get all of your social networking, all of your Facebooking, all your tweeting, everything all done, plus web design, web creation, creative, graphic arts design. They all do it there at LostDogDesign.com. Talk to Raina and Dave. They'll take care of you for everything. I know they handle the Joe's Karting Facebook page and the Joe's Karting website. They do a fantastic job for us as far as the front stretch Facebook page goes, so we greatly appreciate all the effort they do, and they could do the same thing for you. You've got enough to worry about on a weekly basis. Maybe you're battling for the points, and the last thing you need to think about going into Turn 3 was, did I tweet where I'm going to be tonight?
Brad Keselowski does.
Yeah,
Brad does.
Brad probably gets a little extra paycheck for doing that, but
Biff beat him this week.
Well, if Keselowski wasn't tweeting so much, he wouldn't be worried about how somebody was cheating their cars up.
He's becoming the next.
I hope they vote him out.
He's becoming the Busch brothers. He's becoming the bad boy in NASCAR. Everyone is someone during this. There's always one during the season, but that's NASCAR. We're talking dirt track tonight.
You damn right we are.
And we've got a big guy in studio today.
Big guy.
And I'm not talking linebacker for the Chicago Bears kind of a big. I'm talking important big. Donald Trump kind of big.
When we talk racing, we have France, Roots, Sadoffs, and then we have the Stanards.
You gotta put me ahead of Sadoff. Anywhere as long as I'm ahead of Johnny.
Anywhere. Well, you want to be one spot or 2 spots ahead of Johnny?
One's fine. As long as
One. Okay. All right.
Jim Stannard joining us in studio tonight for Slingin Dirt. Season's not over with yet, but race teams are starting to look towards 2013, and we thought it'd be a good idea to get you in the studio and talk about some of the changes that IMCA is going to be having during 2013. Before we get to all the really big questions and the hardball with Dan Taylor, Andrew Kaziski, and Buddy Jones, the big questions we got with Buddy Ray.
Well, with that being said, should we just dive into the questions?
Let's get started.
The one thing I do want to go on a side note, we're probably, for the listeners out there, this is going to be a long enough slinging dirt right here where we're slinging enough stuff that we probably won't be doing A-feature results and whatnot. And then also, with that being said, some of the tracks are winding down. I know the Eagle Raceway here on the 25th is their last points night, so next week we'll start recapping some of the points and where we're at with the features. Jim, the biggest deal in IMCA right now, to start this show off with is talk the 604 crate motor in the A-mods. This is huge. What is IMCA's position? What are they looking at to do with this motor in the A-mods?
what we're trying to do with the modifieds is basically recreate what we have done with the sport mods. Give the drivers an option to pick from. And, to do that, we have to have two competitive options, one, without a big advantage. And we feel we've done that with this 604 motor that we've tested throughout the season.
Now, is this 604 motor, as you've tested throughout the season, obviously it's been pretty good on the dry slick tracks. We just saw Luke Waniger out at I-80 Speedway. He won the event, dry slick track. What's it like on a wet, heavy track that IMCA has seen? Has it been competitive, or is it a lap-down style car?
No, last week Marshalltown, Iowa was a big knee-deep cushion, tacky track. I believe he ran in the top 4. He might have run 4th at Marshalltown, started back in 11th or 12th position. So once again, a very good run on your typical heavy, big cushion track. Last Saturday night at Harlan, and it, as we know in this area, it was an overcast, kind of misty day all day. And that track, once again, was a hammer-down type track. He won the feature at Harlan last Saturday night with the 604 motor.
Oh, okay. Now, with this motor package coming into IMCA in 2013 for the A-Mods, what is IMCA's position, or are they evaluating some of their sponsor relations with the sponsors that sponsor IMCA because of, what's going to be this flood of crates coming in for 2013? What's IMCA going to do about that?
Well, our first responsibility at IMCA is to the drivers and promoters. We have to do what's best for them. And right now, we feel giving them an affordable option to go out there and be competitive is our number one goal. Obviously, we have very long and treasured relationships with a lot of these sponsors, and the last thing we want to do is alienating them, but we have to do what's best for the racers and the promoters first and foremost.
That's fair enough. the crate motors, the teching of the crate motors, I know, in the sport mods, being a sport mod driver myself, this has been a huge issue, the teching of these things. You can't do all the tech in the world every night. The IMCA officials would be there till 6 in the morning. Are you guys looking at new procedures going into 2013 with the 602 and the 604s on how to tech these things more efficiently to catch some of the guys, cheating these things up?
What we really want to do with the 604 is take some of the lessons learned with the 602 and try to improve on that whole process. One of the things that we'll be looking at is the 604 motor, when it leaves the dealership, will have to have IMCA seals on it along with the GM seals. Once again, one more step, one more way we can try to trace that motor and stay ahead of the, whether it be the copycat bolts on the internet or what have you, to gain a little more control of that motor right out of the chute.
So basically like a double seal system then.
Absolutely. And when we control the seal system, we have a lot more options than just relying on what GM does. So I think by controlling the seals, we'll have a much better handle from the start with that motor. With the crate motors, here's one thing I've always personally been interested in. You see this Chevy crate motor, but racing, for being 100 years old, you got the guys that like their Fords, their Dodges, their Chevys. Why haven't we seen a Ford or a Mopar crate engine available in IMCA? Well, I think the biggest thing is we have to find one, or one has to be out there that matches up with the Chevy, the GM motor that we're using right now. I know the Ford motor, I think that's an aluminum headed. For the sport mods, it obviously wouldn't work. It's about an $8,000 motor, I believe. And I don't have the horsepower specs in front of me right now with that motor, but I know it doesn't really fit or match up with the GM motor that we've
power for power, torque for torque.
Exactly, elected to go with. And that's important. We got to keep this thing under control cost-wise. And, we feel that we've picked a good option with the GM 602, 604. And once again, our number one concern is keeping the deal affordable.
So what are they going to do now with the hobbies and sport mods? I know some of those guys got $7,500, $10,000 motors under the hoods. What are you going to start doing with those two classes?
Well, once again, it all comes down to tech. And what we've done in the past month, we have one guy coming on September 1st. We hired another one to handle a region of the country. What we want to do is try to be more proactive with the local tracks out there by getting more of our tech people to work with them. Obviously, we can't be at every track every night, but the more people we have out on the field on a given night, the better we can help educate the local guys on what to look for, how to tech, and so on and so forth. So I think the answer to that question is we've taken a lot of steps to be more proactive by bringing more people on staff to have more people out there on each night.
Would you assume that with the $7,500 to $10,000 crate motors in a class like a hobby or a sport mod, and boy, I'm going to get shot in the morning for saying this, is this where the claim is effective in its original intent?
Well, absolutely. Part of the policing process a little bit falls on the racers. And that's what the claim's in there for. And it's been used, around this area. I think we had one at Eagle a couple weeks ago and what have you. But that option's out there for the racer, and we encourage him to use that. If you think there's a motor out there that doesn't fit in that class, that's what the claim's there for. Buy it, get it out of the class. The number of claims obviously is gone down, but we believe there's got to be a balance with proper teching, and then that option for the claim out there. And that's why we've spent some money. We've brought some new people on board. We want to help better educate all the local tech guys.
We posted on Bud's Facebook page. We had a couple of people say, hey, listen, if there's something you want to ask our IMCA guy tonight, which, by the way, we're sitting with Jim Stannard of IMCA. If there's anything you want to ask him, ask away on our Facebook page. And one of the comments was made by John, says, if you have the money to race modifieds and you're a good enough driver, you shouldn't be in a sport mod. IMCA isn't thinking of the whole picture when it comes to the sport mods, and they want to sell crate motors from Chevy because they get their cut for everyone that's sold. Ford and Dodge don't give IMCA a cut, so they won't let them run those crates. And they put a claim on the motors to disadvantage with the second...
With the two-barrel
two-barrel carburetor, knowing It's down over 30 to 40 horse and a 60 pounds of torque. So people realize it has brought a crate, and it's all about the money, and that's all it's ever been about. What's your response to that comment?
Boy, whoever sent that in really doesn't have a clue. And I don't even know how I can answer something so far out on that. No, we don't get a cut every crate motor that's sold.
Oh, you don't?
No, absolutely not. I wish.
I was hoping I could get a little piece of that.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'll tell you what, if I can get it done, I'll cut you guys all in on it, okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Crate motors legal by the front stretch or, slinging dirt.
Prepare for softballs the rest of this interview then.
And that's part of the, I don't want to say problem because everybody thinks they know everything, but that's part of the challenges we face when stuff gets thrown out there like that really has no factual base to it. And then, it just kind of grows. And once again, the guy who wrote this really, quite honestly, doesn't have a clue. And, the claim's been in IMCA for 30 some odd years now, so it's not a new rule we threw in there when we elected to go with the crates. I mean, it's been a major part of IMCA for a long time. So, our goal, once again, is to get a couple different motor options that are as equal as we can humanly get them and let the racers decide, and that's the way it ought to be.
All right, I've got a really good question here. Now, all these questions, they came not necessarily from me, but from a lot of the racers and a lot of the fans and the crew members. And I thought this was one that was really worth asking. Why does IMCA seem to think they can control how drivers compete in other sanctions? Why does it matter if someone runs a modified NASCAR, USRA, USMTS, UMP, and runs a sport mod in IMCA? I would love to see all drivers have the ability to get some laps and come into the IMCA modifieds with some experience. Ever thought about if you run modified X number of times in another sanction, you will be forced to move into modifieds the next season in IMCA? I think a lot of drivers would feel more comfortable moving up if they worked with this on their issue. Just his opinion.
A couple things, and we don't ever want to get into the position where we say you have to move up. That's something, once again, we're not going to get involved in. That's an individual preference to a driver.
Sure.
We have the rule in IMCA that you can't race, have a sport mod license and a modified license. And I guess to be fair to our drivers, why would we bend that rule for outside people to come in and do it? We have to be consistent with everything we do. And if we tell an IMCA guy you can't race both, why should we let a guy that's racing modified outside IMCA come in and compete in both divisions?
So let me ask you this. If you have an IMCA modified guy wanting to hold a USMTS license and go race under that sanction, would IMCA allow that or no?
Oh, absolutely. Modified to modified, there's absolutely no issues. It's only, once again, tweaking the rule we have in place for modified drivers to open it up and allow non-IMCA guys to compete where we won't even let IMCA members do that. All right.
Another question asked, back to the claim real quick. With the claim, why doesn't IMCA mandate a ruling stated, if Tom Dick claimed a motor from Jim Bob, and I've seen this in my 20 years of racing, Tom Dick will claim a motor tonight from Jim Bob. Well, then that motor never ever sees the dirt track, and all of a sudden, Jim Bob can't afford to race anymore because he had to scrape all his money together to put that one motor together. Well, Jim Bob was just being, I guess, kind of an arse and wanting to claim a motor just because he was mad at Tom Dick. So why doesn't IMCA say, well, look, if you're going to claim this motor, then you have to run this motor at another sanctioned event because that way you get away from the grudge claiming, and it lends that, not that it's not credible, because the claiming is a credible, viable option out there. It makes sense to me, but then it just leads that much more credibility. You see what I'm saying, Andrew?
No, I don't at all.
Oh.
I'm not.
I think I follow you. It's that if I walked up and you put everything you've got, your $25 you've got in your pocket, and you put it into a great motor, and you go out and whoop me all season long, and then I just walk out and basically claim your motor, but I put it back in my shop, and I never even run it.
And it never gets used, and then I'm out of racing for the year.
But
and IMCA doesn't want that.
I'm good because I've got my engine, and I've got your engine.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for explaining that a little better.
Sometimes less words is better, buddy. And by the way, if you don't use names like Jim Bob and Toe Jam and
Oh,
Jesus.
Tom Dick.
Anyways,
I know him.
John.
But, I guess, buddy, to answer your question is the real reason the claim's supposed to be there is to take care of motors that shouldn't be racing in that division. So the last thing we want, and let's say you show up, we talked a little bit about $10,000 claim motors in the sport mods. That motor needs to be out of that division. The last thing we want is this motor to keep recycling its way to the top. So if the motor doesn't belong there, it shouldn't be out there, and that's what the claim's for. And I've seen that in all divisions, modifieds, way back in the day. I can remember, this is back in the 90s, guys losing $15,000 motors. Well, guess what? That motor shouldn't have been on the track, and the last thing we want is that motor just coming back, and running up front. So a lot of times when that motor doesn't belong there, it's better just to get out of the class, sell it to somebody in another class, run it in another class, and do that. Now, one thing we have changed in the last couple of years, if you claim a guy, you have to be back at that track the next week.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Now, we don't say you have to have that motor in there, but you have to be back at that track. That way you're not popping in, popping out.
Is there a penalty if you don't show up?
Yes, there is. I believe it's the same as a refusal. I believe. I'm sorry if I don't have that right. And we've put a lot of other things in place. 100% participation in order to claim is something that's, come into effect the last few years to try to stop what you guys just talked about, a guy popping in, buying a motor, then never seeing him again.
Right. Now, and we just kind of laughed about it, IMCA, for the record, they're not getting a kickback from all these crate motors.
That's absolutely my favorite rumor. Everybody in this sport is getting a kickback on something.
Yeah.
I can't even count the amount of kickbacks I've got.
So let me ask you this. Does IMCA actually get a kickback from any of the other IMCA legal parts that we see in the catalogs, the speedways, the JR Motorsports? I mean, if it says IMCA approved aero wheel, does IMCA, and to me, it doesn't make sense. I see both sides of the issue, but I just wanted to hear it from you.
What we do is we do sell the stickers that have to go on the wheels. Part of the reason we have to sell them, we have cost involved too. Every year, we pull wheels from all the manufacturers, send them out to California to get tested to make sure they're meeting the specs. And I think the wheel rule is a great example. That rule came into effect in probably about 96, maybe 97, right in that area. And the reason it came into effect is we were getting pictures and letters every day of wheels exploding, going through guys' roofs. It was a true danger. In fact, Marsh at the time had a tag on the wheel, and I got to paraphrase a little bit, but it was, in order to mount tire, get a long hose, put under a trailer, get away. Failure to follow these procedures will leave you graveyard dead. To me, when we start throwing, when the instruction manuals, have the word graveyard dead in them, we've probably got a problem, guys.
Yeah.
And not only that, the cost of the wheels were getting really out of hand because without any kind of specs on them, we were down to 9.5 pound wheels.
Oh, wow.
And they were putting big bead bumps on there to keep the tire on it. And once again, that was what was, I think, a combination of a big bead bump and a lightweight wheel, what was just blowing those things up and creating a true danger. And that's something we had to address at the time. Since we've done that, the cost of the wheel has come down from what it was back there in the late 90s. So I think the wheel rule has been a rule that we put into effect a long time ago that has saved the racers money throughout time.
Well, with that being said, does IMCA actually get a kickback from all the other stuff that's IMCA approved parts? No, the only parts. So that's a big misconception. Yeah, the only parts that we have any type of a deal with is the wheel stickers, the A-arms that go on the stock cars, the uppers, and the spindles for the modifieds. And once again, both those other deals were an example of we felt we had to step in
to control the cost. And to be quite honest, it's worked. I mean, there are spindles out there on the market, that 7-degree spindles that you can find all day long on the internet, or late model racers might be selling out of their shops. That
Andrew.
No, not Andrew.
Let's get serious here.
I think the guy I'm talking about is a little heavier than Andrew. And
that's not really narrowing the field down.
But
Oh yeah, because Andrew's so huge.
I'm like Brian Urlacher.
You're what, $125 wet?
Yeah, I guess when I get to the show.
I've seen Smurfs bigger than Andrew.
Yeah. Talking with Jim Stannard here on Slingin Dirt, the segment we do each Wednesday night, and we'll have this up probably Thursday morning or Friday morning for everybody to enjoy. Jim, thanks so much for sitting down and talking with us. Why are QCs not allowed in modifieds?
Well, there's a number of reasons, and I think that the biggest one out there right now is the majority of our members don't want them. Right now, over 65% of our drivers race one track, one night a week, and there's really not a lot of need for it. Right now, we do questionnaires to everybody who doesn't have a membership. You know, if you were not a member this year but had one last year, we're going to send you out a questionnaire to try to find out why. And overwhelmingly, I'm talking 95, 96% of them all come back financial. You know, it's just getting too expensive to race. And that's something we really have to focus on. And I think what would happen right now, if we basically allowed the quick change, here's another, the numbers everybody can pull out, but real numbers, we're between $2,500 and $3,000 that these racers are going to be forced to spend to be competitive in their minds. And that's the key word right there, perception. And the perception will be, if I don't have a quick change, I'm going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit.
Yeah, but now if IMCA was to say, okay, it's not a rule but an option, if you're taking a traveling guy that's going to drive 3-4 nights a week to go race, and he wanted to have a quick change as an option, not a rule, how do you combat the argument, well, gears are $400 or $500 for a floater, but quick change gears are $100. And, you're talking $2,500 to $3,000 for a quick change rear end, but you can find some of the floaters with the brackets and everything, and you're still going to be right around that $2,500 to $3,000 rear end.
Once again, our focus is on weekly racing, and it's just like any other business. I mean, buddy, if the majority of your customers that come into the kart place want to race just a single-seat go-kart, but you say, no, you've got to race the double-seat go-kart, they're not going to like it. And
no.
You have to do what, in business, what the majority of your members want. And part of the success of IMCA through the years has been a focus on weekly racing. That's what we're about. And we don't want to lose that focus and create a situation where we're catering to a lot more of the bigger dollar teams. Our deal is about the average guy working 40, 50 hours a week that wants to go out to the local track and have fun. And that's the racer we keep, the rules catered to be quite honest.
I had a hobby stock driver ask me, floaters in the hobbies. Has IMCA ever looked at possibly putting a floater in a hobby?
Every year. It's something we look at every year, and it's something we'll continue to look at. Part of the problems, with that is everything that goes along with the floater that we would have to change the rules for, including, we have the drum brake rule right now. Well, that's going to pretty much be out the window with floaters. So it's something we keep exploring, and every year we review it. And I think if we could find something that wouldn't force us to change a bunch of other rules with the floaters, it might be something we'd take.
Maybe like a floater package with drum brake setup, something like that.
That obviously would, maybe let us look at the situation a little bit different. All rules change cost guys money, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
And right now, our goal is to do everything we can to save guys money. Not only the new guys getting into the sport, but we have to do something to the guys that have been in the sport that race week in, week out, whether it be 1-2 nights a week. We've got to do whatever we can to save them money too.
Dan, you want to ask a question?
Well, there's another host that you keep running over.
Oh, Andrew, you want to ask a question?
You know what? No, I really don't. I feel like a keyboard. What's it? A keyboard commander, right? Now, all these
Keyboard
questions.
commando.
And these are kind of a lot of tech questions,
Well,
right
let's
now.
hear Andrew ask a question.
All right, here it is.
You don't want to interrupt him or take it really quick?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, Andrew, you're allowed to talk now.
Well,
I'll give you the next 3 questions.
This is an
I doubt that.
This is
I
an
doubt
intelligent
that.
question right
Wait,
here.
is it coming from you?
No, it's not
Okay,
coming from me. I
then-
think this is still some
okay.
more viewers.
Okay, good.
Has IMCA looked into what can be done to help the curb of bending the rules in the sport compacts?
Oh boy, that is without a doubt the
dumbest
toughest
question
No, absolutely not. It's something we try to work on all the time. For an entry level type class, an affordable type class, that is a teching nightmare, to be quite honest. We've got poor Tom Katowski running ragged, looking up, trying to research what shocks a 93 Nissan had on it. And it truly is just a nightmare to come up with all the combinations that were developed. The 83 and a half Nissan Sentra, whatever, had this motor in it. So that's why I'm running it. It's tough. I think, to be quite honest, a little bit what I talked about earlier, bringing some new people on board to help us will help free up some time, and hopefully we can get a better handle on that class and unfortunately the multiple rules that get thrown at us.
I know Tom does look up the shocks and whatnot, because when I worked at O'Reilly's at 50th and L, he would literally call me at nighttime. Bud, what's this come out with? What's that come out with? He almost every night, Tom was calling me for something. So,
oh, absolutely, and like I said, our director of competition, Tom Katowski, probably has the most thankless job in the world, and it's a nightmare. We've gone through stuff. We've got a guy running a Ford motor that was available for half a year back in the '60s, and it's just stuff like that he's constantly chasing to try to keep up with the rules.
John, talk about IMCA sanctioned sprints in Nebraska. How big is that we finally got some IMCA sprints sanctioned here?
Well, I think it's a big thing for everybody involved. Unfortunately, I know this has been a hot topic on your show in the past, and I think what happens is we've got to once again try to get the class under control. It's something we chased all last year with a number of tracks throughout the country, what we could do to try to take the current 360 package that's out there and maybe get that under control. And to be quite honest, after about a year of chasing that, we didn't see any definite answers that we thought would make a big difference. It's kind of a bad deal when you can go to a local track and you'll have $7,500 motors racing against $48,000 motors. We've got to try to narrow that gap. So what we did, it happened at the IMIS show in Indy. We were our booth was right next to a sprint car company, Triple X, and a guy that I know have known throughout the years was working for Triple X, and he kind of sat down and said, "You know what? Have you ever talked to French and Smiley about what they've got going?" And I've known both French and Smiley for a lot of years, and to be honest, I feel kind of stupid. I really didn't know a lot about it. So, I got back and we looked into it, and, it's not a bad rule package. And then, got on the phone with French, got on the phone with Smiley, and the thing that really clicked was their philosophy goes hand in hand with what we do is as far as keeping stuff to the best of our ability affordable. So it really was a natural fit at the end of the day. And boy, I'll tell you what, I was down in Texas, I don't know, a month ago, what have you, at a couple of those shows down there, and it's just unbelievable. I think the thing that stood out to me the most at one of Smiley's races was the sprint car guys were having fun. And that's something, unfortunately, we don't see enough in racing right now. But I think it all goes back to they were racing within their means. And when you do that, it's going to be more enjoyable. Right now we got guys, unfortunately, who are out there racing way above their head, where they finish decides if they're able to cover the check they wrote on Wednesday.
That'd be me.
And all kidding aside, that really puts a damper on racing for everybody. I mean, when you're that stressed out getting to the track, you're not going to have fun. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it puts you in hot water at home, and it just kind of snowballs and creates an atmosphere that makes it, kind of tense around the pits these days. And that's something we hope we can help in the sprint car area with our Race Saver IMCA partnership, and going back to the modifieds, it's something we can bring back to the modifieds with this 604 crate engine.
How long was that phone conversation with French and Smiley?
Did anybody yell at you?
How many times did you hear you had an imported hillbilly that needed you to move closer to the phone?
I think French is actually planning a road trip to come out here, so I can bring him in studio for you guys.
Oh, I don't know if we've got enough hard drive space for that recording. We had him on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the 305s going to Eagle, and it got tense. And it got long-winded, as most conversations with Texans can.
Yeah, and not only Texans, you got to throw in a guy from Virginia, too. Yeah. So
he was the imported hillbilly, because Texas didn't have enough of them.
You brewed the perfect storm with that combination.
Oh, that was one of my favorite conversations with those two.
But once again, French, I truly believe there is nobody in this industry that is as knowledgeable as French out there. He's been around forever. He's been there, done that, and if you look back and the stuff French has done in the sprint car industry and everything, it's just phenomenal. It really is.
Let's move into the issue of sanctioning. The big story around here this year in the Midwest was Denison Crawford County Speedway opening back up since 1997 for weekly racing. What's the chances of them possibly being sanctioned in 2013?
Well, I spoke to them on the phone last week. And what we're going to do is after the Supernationals, get out of the way and we've got a little bit of free time again, our plan is to, we'll go over to Denison, sit down, talk to them, and see what both parties want and see if we can come to, something that's going to work for both of us. One of the big things when it comes to sanctioning a track is philosophy. We're only as strong as our weakest link out there. And if we don't have a track that 100% buys in to IMCA, it's not a good positive thing for us. So really, people say, well, you just look at mileage when you sanction a track. No, it's the vibe we get when we sit down and talk philosophies with these tracks that really help determine any,
Sorry, that was kind of a weird little break there.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess where was it? That's what determines the sanctioning more than anything.
Let's talk about I-80 this year. They ran Friday nights and they were unsanctioned. What was the determination for them not being sanctioned this year?
Well, the biggest thing that played into that was Beatrice, another track. Beatrice, probably 65, 75 miles away. I don't have it exactly. And what Beatrice is trying to do, they're working a lot with Eagle. They had a lot of things in place to help get the drivers to support both tracks. And the thing we've got to do as a sanctioning body, the service that we have to provide to all of our tracks, is not to oversaturate the market on them. And that's something that we worried about with the distance being so close, was oversaturating the market. And right now, it's not like it was probably 20 years ago when there was so many cars out there, you could have tracks that close. But right now, the pool isn't what it used to be, and especially on a Friday night. That even throws a new wrinkle into it, because traditionally Friday night tracks don't get as many cars as Saturday. It's obviously a lot easier for guys to race on Saturday than Fridays with work commitments. So I think the thing we looked at was how close Beatrice was and the effect that might have on Beatrice Speedway.
What's 2013 look like for I-80? If they were to come to you and say, hey, can we get, what about sanctioning in 2013? Is this something you're going to fall back and say, again, we're gonna give it to Beatrice and you guys are just going to have to kind of fend unsanctioned?
Unfortunately, unless one of the two places move, we're still going to be faced with the same mileage situation we're in right now. And once again, we want to be consistent with everything we've done. So if the mileage hasn't changed in a year between the two tracks, it probably wouldn't work again. But at this time, I haven't heard anything from I-80 anyway, so it's kind of a pie-in-the-sky question.
What's the biggest current issues right now with IMCA looking into the 2013 season?
Well, I think, to be quite honest, we're probably looking more at the 2015 season than the 13 season. One of the things that I believe is really set IMCA ahead of really the other sanctioning bodies out there is the long-term thinking that we try to do. You just can't sit back and react. You have to be out ahead of everything. People talk about the crate motor and the modified. Well, the testing for this didn't begin this year. It was something we were doing last year, too.
Really? I didn't know that. I thought it was just this year.
No. We were testing it basically throughout the year last year. And, we tested a 525. We tested different combinations. So this has been a 2-year process with the 604. So, we're going to look at some other options as far as the rules and, maybe address some hobby stock issues. We have a few other things that we feel have to be addressed once again to keep the affordability in line. And it's stuff that, we're working on for the 14 and 15 much more than 13. I think we're pretty set on our 13 package.
Let's talk about the future of IMCA and the great dirt track sport that we've seen. One thing I've noticed is, anybody can see, is that with the tightening of the belts, as far as everyone's pocketbook is concerned, this sport just continues to cost a little bit more, and people are making just a little bit less. You've talked on detail on several different items you guys are working on for 2013, 14, and 15 as far as continuing to make being an IMCA sanctioned driver and track affordable. Can you expand on some of the other things you guys might be doing to make sure that IMCA is around for a long time?
Well, we've been around since, I believe, 1915. So, we're not kind of new to this parade, but I think the main thing we have to do is stick to our philosophy of providing affordable weekly racing for the average guy. And once again, there's a number of ways we can do that. Obviously the rule package, which we've discussed a lot of times, but also it's trying to do stuff for the promoters. What can we do to better serve the promoters also as well as the drivers? And we address that with additional staff. One thing that we're very, very fortunate to have at our disposal. Brett Root is probably one of the most savvy electronic media people I've seen, and that works out real good. And so, he's able to stay ahead of the curve with whether it be the Facebook, all this type of social media we've become obviously very, very heavily involved with. We've partnered up with Barry Braun, a gentleman out of Minnesota, and he's now heading our IMC on demand. So once again, we're out there. We have guys out there in the field filming, trying to open IMC up to a broader audience, and I think that's really the way of the future. But I think to answer your question again, most importantly, we've got to keep our focus on affordable racing and everything that we have to do for that. Right now, we see a lot of, whether it be sanctioning bodies or other groups, their focus is how can we please the top 2 or 3 drivers at every track? How can we take care of sponsors? And unfortunately, that happens at the expense of the rest of the members. So we have to stay focused on our average guy, realize this guy's got to race within a budget, and do everything we can to make it affordable for him.
We're talking again tonight with John Stannard. Jim Stannard, for Pete's sake, of IMCA.
Man, I really feel appreciated.
Wow.
Well, this will be my last Slingin Dirt, I guess.
Yeah, you just got black flagged.
Hey, and Pat, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Pat.
Thanks. That's one of the better names I've been called.
You got Pat and Dud.
Toe Jam, it's always a pleasure.
Jim Stannard of IMCA, thank you so much for coming in tonight. Buddy, you've got just a couple more questions for him tonight so far.
Yeah, what are the top 3 tracks nationwide for IMCA as far as competition in general? The racers are always like, well, this track's got more competition. And the other racers are like, this track's got more competition. And the only reason why I ask this is because we were told last year that there was a ranking system that now has come out for that.
God, I wish I knew that. I always hate being the last to find out. I just found out. Look at some of the facts I found out today on the show. I found out we're getting money for every crate motor. I found out about this ranking system.
All the kickbacks you guys
All the
are getting.
kickbacks. And, I'm telling you what, after I get done here, I'm calling Brett because there's some money around that I'm not aware of. No, we don't have anything to measure the competitiveness of tracks. We base some of our points is based on a car count situation. To get the max bonus points, you have to have 20 cars. But, I think one of the great things about IMCA in staying focused where we're at and having a consistent set of rules, we're the only sanctioning body out there really that has a consistent set of nationwide rules. It's kind of neat because you run into situations where I'm out in California last weekend, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this A feature going, wow. I mean, this is incredible. We've got 3 guys that were in the Supernationals A feature last year in this race. Out of, the 250 guys we had there, I'm sitting out at this small track in California and have 3 of them starting in this race. I go to an Eagle Raceway and I start counting the past national champions in a feature, and you go, wow. Wherever we go in the country, we see such a good quality of drivers because, once again, I think a lot has to do with the rule package and that these guys have raced against each other because of the consistency in the rules. So we'll see guys out in New York that, once again, I'll be at a track Saturday night where I know there was 2 guys that were in the Race of Champions last year at Boone. It's just incredible. And I wish I could sit here and say, boom, this is the best track for the competition in the country, but I really can't because it changes every time I go to a track and that A feature rolls out.
You talk about Boone and the Supernationals, and that's where we're going to wrap it up with. I had one sport mod driver ask this question, when are they going to put up bigger grandstands at Boone and another addition to the catwalk around 3 and 4 so less people will be hogging up space in the pits and the crews can watch their own cars that they work on and pay to come work on and race? This guy put in 3 days of hard work and was not even able to see your car run because there was too many drunks holding up spots on the catwalks. And I thought that was a viable question. I went to Boone for the first time last year. Had a absolute blast at Boone for other reasons. The racing was phenomenal, but there was a lot of people on the catwalks taking up space, and a lot of the crew members and the car owners were upset because, it's their money that basically put that car on the track, and you got every Tom, Dick, and Harry that doesn't know anything or have anything to do with that car up there on the catwalk. Has IMCA looked at doing something or policing it with a wristband or anything for the catwalk?
That's a great problem to have, truly. When you're talking about an event that has too many people at, it makes us really feel proud that we're doing something right along the way. That situation really exists at most tracks throughout the country. There's just, with the pits, we're kind of limited on space. I think we've added on to the catwalks at least once or twice there at Boone. I think, to be quite honest, we're probably out of real estate with adding on to the catwalks. And, there's only so much and so high you can build and without running into, obviously, engineering problems. We bring in some new bleachers. We do the best we can to accommodate all the people who want to get there, but it's tough, and it's a good problem to have, and we're aware of it. But unfortunately, just in some physical limitations that we have makes it impossible. We have too many cars in the pits. We don't have space to build other grandstands because we're using that for pit spaces in the pits.
Not to sound ugly, but I just figured when I was there last year, if you want to watch the big show with the A-mods at Boone, you might as well walk up to the stands 30 minutes prior to get your spot, because don't show up at the last minute because you ain't getting on the catwalk.
No, it's truly it's an unbelievable event, and we're very fortunate to have the people that we have there. We're very thankful to the fans, to the drivers that come out and support this event year in and year out. And I wish we had some more space, to be quite honest. We could probably work a little bit better and accommodate everybody, but unfortunately, our hands are tied on a lot of the physical limitations. Jim,
let me ask you something. It was something as you were answering that, I kind of just popped into my head, one of these brilliant questions I come up with every once in a while. I know we've heard stuff on the NASCAR level, where as far as the debacle in Kentucky last year with the fans getting in and getting out because of the only one-lane road in and one-lane road out. And NASCAR really sat down with Kentucky and said, you guys need to fix this. How much does IMCA sit down with tracks and say, listen, if you're going to be sanctioned, we need you to do this, this, and this? Is that something you guys do at Boone and different tracks around that say there's kind of a minimum standard you guys need to obtain for your attendance and for your fans?
Well, yes and no. We try to do everything we can to help the fans out as much as possible. But unfortunately, a lot of these tracks, just in the location they're at, once again, our hands are kind of tied. I mean, I was at a track the other night up the side of a mountain, and there's not much you could have done. But, the great thing about Boone, and I think part of the big reason we don't have a huge traffic problem at Boone, there's nobody in a hurry to leave the place after the races. I think sometimes we have more people trying to get in after the races than we have trying to get out. So it's kind of a deal with that event. The checkered flag falls and not everybody runs to their cars and jumps out on the highway. So, it's kind of a neat deal to see, obviously, what goes on after the races at Boone. And it's a problem that, we have the State Patrol out there helping to the best of their ability to make sure everybody is able to get out of the track safe.
That's good.
So our final question, I think, of the night is, how is the Supernationals shaping up? What's going on? Any new big events? Something cool going to happen there that we don't know about besides beer and possibly, never mind.
Racing. He was going to say racing.
Yes.
I know nothing. I live in Omaha, so I really don't know nothing about that.
There's a lot of beer and Hoosiers that go on at that track.
Hoosiers, yeah.
Hoosiers. I was talking about tires. There's a lot of tires.
You said Hooters.
No, I said Hoosiers.
Okay. Allegedly there is. I know me personally, as soon as that checkered flag falls, I'm usually in bed about 10 minutes after that.
You might be the only one.
Yeah, I probably am. But
I'll bet you're in bed.
Yeah.
You're not celebrating, you're not relaxing, nothing like that.
No, it's all business for me.
It's Matlock and straight to bed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the...
Did you say Matlock?
I did say Matlock. Would you prefer Murder, She Wrote?
Oh, boy.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
I was thinking more like Perry Mason.
You need to get out a little bit. You need to come to Boone once.
I'm working on it.
It could seriously change your life.
The best way to describe Boone, though, you go to Boone a boy and you come out of Boone a man. I mean, that's what I took from it.
You go in saying Boone and you come out saying bone.
Yeah.
Bone.
That's for the lucky few that come out. Because there are some that really, I don't know if they make it out, quite honestly. But, the great thing, we got some numbers on our pre-entries the other day, and actually where we were at the end of last week, and we compared that to where we were 2 weeks from now. The Friday before Boone starts on Monday, we compared those numbers to where we were last Friday, and we're up over 100 pre-entries from last year.
Wow.
Right now we have, I think the number's right around 590 cars entered. And those are confirmed entries by, they've already rented their pit stalls. They've already signed up for whether it be the Race of Champions and what have you. Those are over 590 confirmed cars at this time.
But have you got yours yet?
We're trying to get to Boone. I got the week off. We're trying to get to Boone.
591 and growing.
There we go. 591 and growing.
But that 590 doesn't count the Buddy Rays out there going, well, we're trying to come. This is actual paid pit stalls, registrations. But every year, it seems like Boone, every year for the Supernationals, there's always the tracks out there trying to compete for your business. Does that ever concern? I mean, you got the $10,000 to win show up in Wisconsin. Does that really weigh on IMCA's mind at all when tracks try to do that?
This is probably about my 19th or 20th Supernationals. And that means
no wonder you have gray hair.
Yeah, to the best of, I can
God,
I can probably
jerk.
Yeah, really.
No.
You called him fat earlier. Now you're talking about his gray hair. You were calling him old about watching Matlock and Perry Mason.
Exactly.
What's the matter with you?
Bottom line is, I know his name's Jim.
Yeah, I was gonna say at least Buddy's got my name right.
Yeah, I'll shut up now.
It's what they say. All publicity is good publicity as long as they spell your name right. So at least he had my name right.
Tell that to the Bush brothers.
Now you almost made me forget where I was. No, the big shows have been going on against the Supernationals for 20 years now. And unfortunately, there's never been one that lasts more than 2 or 3 years. We take a look at this 10,000 to win sport mod, B mod, whatever you want to call it, race. This is the same track who ran a 10,000 to win modified race against Boone last year and had about 43, 44 cars. It's gone on. There was a time where they tried to run a 10,000 to win race probably 2 hours from Boone in Iowa. Lasted 1 year before they lost so much money. It's something that's always, they've tried to run several shows against it. But what you got to remember, what's going on there, they're running a race against an event, and the event will always, always win.
It's trying to trump Daytona or Talladega. It's a week worth of festivities, racing, and just a hell of a lot of fun.
And the main thing is it's a week worth of fun that has been built up for 30 years now. This is our 30th anniversary of the Supernationals. So it's not like we're some overnight deal that just kind of popped up. This deal has been built over 30 years. And the way we've built it is obviously doing everything we can to provide the best racing, the best facility. Nobody can run a show like Lawton does. You don't run 500 cars a night in 6 hours, 7 hours. You know what I mean? I go to tracks right now that don't even have 70 cars, and we sit there and race about as long as we race on a typical night at the Supernationals. So that's been a big part of it. But I think something that IMCA and Boone Speedway has really, really worked hard at is making this much more than just a race. Making this an event where we've got activities planned throughout the week after the races to go along with it. This year we've have a party going on Sunday where we're bringing a band in, free chili, free beer. Once again, just to give the people something to do.
Now, you're speaking my language. You're talking free chili and free beer.
Well, come on over Sunday night.
I may just have to do that.
Oh, you will not. Matlock's on.
That's true. Jim, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I know it was a bit of a task going through all the questions we had for you. We only had about 40 of them, and we really appreciate all your time, and thank you so much for joining us here on Slingin' Dirt. I hope you can come back soon and talk more. We loved having you in. Well,
it's obviously pretty convenient for me to get here. It's about a 15-minute drive, and part of what we do is, and we work so hard, is to be out there as much as we can to help answer questions. We have guys throughout the country that are at tracks every night, and our goal is to answer as much questions as we can for our customers. Well, Jim, and I'll be probably one of the few people, you guys don't get this enough, and this goes as far as track officials are concerned, as far as owners, promoters, and everybody. You guys do a good job. And I know you guys hear 95% of just plain bitching. Yeah. And so from a guy who's just trying to go around and tell everybody, you're doing a good job. Keep up the good work. We love watching weekly racing. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. And this has been Slingin' Dirt, presented by Lost Dog Design. LostDogDesign.com for all your Facebooking, social networking, tweeting, graphic arts design, website design, and website maintenance. They'll take care of you. Raina and Dave at Lost Dog Design will do everything they can to take care of you. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with another edition of Slingin' Dirt. In the meantime, for Andrew Kaziski, for Buddy Ray, and myself, Dan Taylor, we'll see you at the track.